All right, guys, we are now moving into part two. I have another white oak right here that I have left as kind of a backup tree, just in case something does happen to any of these remaining trees. You never know if disease will take it out, but it's a fairly nice looking white oak. This tree has never produced a single acorn, and it is still under that umbrella of absolutely no production. Now the growth rate of this tree has slightly increased. So the amount of sunlight is getting in here, except this hickory tree is causing all kinds of problems. It's obviously shading out this really big oak, and then it's shading out with these lower limbs right here onto this white oak. So it's hindering two oak trees. I really want this tree gone, but I may have to do some serious talking just to even get permission to do that. Just be aware, if I had full permission, none of these hickory trees would be in here. They are very low use to me and lower scale items for the deer. All right, so these oaks over here are still young, but not as young as they appear. You're looking at trees all roughly in the same age bracket, anywhere from 25 years old to as old as maybe 40 years old. This was logged off when I was a kid. That's how I know about the age of these trees. I was helping Dad split firewood when I was 8, 9, 10 plus years old. And some of it came from here where the loggers came in and removed some of the best standing trees we had. So I do have a rough idea on these trees. Now this white oak right here, and this is a red oak, they are growing in an improved environment, but it is still a sheltered environment. It's just not quite as bad as it used to be. That hickory tree is still causing a problem, needs to be cut down, or at least die. Now, these trees have never ever produced acorns. In my opinion, they are old enough, but due to the bottleneck size of the tree, nut production here will be very, very limited. And it's sad that these trees haven't produced, but at the same time, I know why. The amount of sunlight right here is far less than many other spots in this island. These trees only need sunlight to get going. Now, when it comes to spacing, these are really too close together for my comfort. And because I have so many white oaks here, this red oak is growing like a straight up telephone pole. This one is not. It's growing straight for 75% of the tree or more, and then suddenly it has a big lean in the main trunk to where it's trying to grow around the hickory tree. I probably will take this tree out, and I want this tree to have all that space, and it probably will start producing. This oak tree is also under the same scenario, but it is far younger, in the neighborhood of 20 years old or less. Too young for me to worry about production, but it is also shaded. Now over here, I didn't do, in my opinion on this, a very good job with this tree. It's much improved over what it used to be, but these other trees here, including this guy, this little offshoot right here, it's costing me acorns. And how do I know that? Well, first off, this tree has never ever produced an acorn. This tree is approaching somewhere around 35 to 40 years old, plenty old enough to make nuts. It never ever has until this year. So this is now year 2, and this tree, let me get over here and try not to crush some of my fall blend here. Walk in the thin spots. This tree is absolutely loaded with acorns. Now I'm using this poplar tree as a good indication of how many is actually in this tree. This white oak was actually straight when the year started, with a slight lean, not much, but a slight lean toward the left of your screen. Now look what happens as I run up the tree. Look how far out that tree keeps leaning now. There are hundreds of acorns in that tree. Probably pushing around 500 nuts or so. That is a vast improvement on this tree, far exceeding my expectations for a year 2 turnaround. I would say the acorns are about the average size. You can find them as small as a 1/2 inch or as big as an inch. The more rain you typically get, the closer toward that inch mark you'll get. Plus, if you have better ground, those acorns also get bigger that way. And obviously I don't have good ground up here, but as I improve this under my soil improvement program, I think things will start to slowly change. Now, let's get over here to the big boy. I want to save these other oaks for another video. Now, when I first started this project this year, I told you my theory for the reason this tree has never made anything is because of those locust trees that I cut down over here. And I was correct. This tree, for the first time that I have ever seen here, it is producing now. Most of the nuts are in the very top of this tree, and it took me a little while to find it. None of these lower limbs have acorns in them, but you go about a little more than 2/3, maybe 3/4 the way up the tree, and you start finding a handful here and there, and then when you get to the top, it is covered with nuts. So there are probably in the neighborhood of 200 or 300 nuts on this tree. Another vast improvement in my acorn system. So just by removing these trees right here, this one, some of them over there, and this one over here, this tree is now producing acorns. And the more trees I start cleaning out, like this tree right here and this tree right here, the better this white oak is going to get production wise. Because of this white oak's death over here, there are now new limbs sprouting up and down this trunk, trying to grow that way toward the other pocket of sunlight. So sometime down the road, not next year, but I think in a few years, you're talking 5 to 10 years, there probably will be some form of acorns facing on this side of the tree for the first time. Those other limbs are they're just really too small. Their growth rates are increasing. They've grown at least 1 foot this year, and there's several other new limbs popped up right here. I think their main focus is growing and not nut producing, as the tree tries to take advantage of this big old hole over here. So just simply walking your woods, you need to diagnose the problems. And this tree's problem was just, it was overcrowded, not enough sun, and the rate at which those locust trees grew, it was just basically straight up, and it outgrew a lot of these lower limbs, shaded the tree out, and gave it a really horrible condition to try to even reproduce in. Now the tree is freed up from at least 80% of it, and it's already paying off. Next year, the nut rate will be far superior to this year. As long as no freaky frost hits or some strange weather event, that tree will smoke this year's production. So now when I'm hunting over here, I now have a new food source that is high in carbs right here for the deer that was never here before. The island itself is vastly improving, even though the food plot itself is being reset. There is a vast difference in potential food than what was here 2 years ago. All right, so I'm going to cut this video off, and then I'm going to start over here and show you why I'm really, really happy.